Good morning, everybody. Today is Sunday, March 17th, 2013. Thank you for joining us at the Minnesota Forecaster. My name is Bill. We have our guest again, as we did the other day, Tom Novak from Novak Weather, and he's here to talk about the storm scenario for tonight and tomorrow. Thank you for joining us, Tom.
Well, thank you, Bill. Good morning, everybody. This should be a fun storm to talk about.
We appreciate your time again, and tell us what you see in the offing starting tonight.
Well, we're going to take a look at some forecast maps, and one thing I want to stress is that this is going to be a big storm. A lot of people out there may be letting their guard down because they're hearing about snow totals in the 1 to 4 inch range. But I think everybody needs to keep in mind, Bill, that this storm system is going to be large. It's going to cover a lot of real estate. In fact, much, if not all, of the upper Midwest is going to get accumulating snow, some of it significant. And then the winds are going to follow in behind this storm system, excuse me, to create near blizzard or blizzard conditions over much of the plain states in upper Midwest. So this is going to have high impact over a large piece of real estate. Once again, that's why we consider this storm to be kind of a monster as we get into late tonight and especially tomorrow morning and into the afternoon. One thing I wanted to show real quick, Bill, this is something that forecasters look at quite often, is the upper aerodynamics, and we talked about this in our last discussion a few days back. But we always look for what's considered a buckle in the jet stream. And that's a trough, which you can kind of see right now over the central portion of the United States. Again, this map is of the United States and southern Canada, and let's see if we can get a little bit better picture of it there. But right over southern Minnesota, well, all of Minnesota, the Dakotas and Iowa, you can see we're in between two what we call jet streaks at the 300 millibar level. That's where jet airplanes fly, is way up there in the atmosphere. But in between these two jet streaks, which are red areas on your map, in between there you get lift. That's where you often will see divergence and diffluence in the atmosphere. And within that area, that's where a lot of lift occurs. And it just so happens that that area is located right over the central or the heart of the country, including the Twin Cities. So from an upper level dynamic standpoint, Bill, this storm system has a lot to work with. And that's why we're expecting a massive storm system.
Again, when you say massive, you're referring to overall size as opposed to snow depth in one particular area.
Right. I think one thing that bothers me, and I don't want to talk for other weather forecasters, but when you start talking about large storm systems, often the public just thinks of, oh, 10 inches, 12 inches plus of snow, but that's not the only reason why we consider this storm to be large. In fact, the snow totals certainly will likely not get at least that high, but just the impact level of this storm. Not only will there be snow, and we may be talking more like 4 to 6 inches of snow, but more importantly, it's going to fall over a large area. The winds are going to be very strong with this storm system. And remember, it's mid-March. Temperatures should be in the 40s, maybe near 50 degrees right now. But we're going to be talking about temperatures in the teens and 20s for highs, and some lows will be dipping well below zero. So this is a storm system that's going to have great impact from a winter standpoint over much of the upper Midwest.
Mm-hmm. So Tom, I know, again, as an armchair weather enthusiast, and maybe there are other enthusiasts who are a little ignorant about these things out there, typically it seems like the low pressure, for us to get a lot of snow, it has to track to the south. But my understanding is in this case, the low pressure is going to actually track to the north. Tell us why we can still expect snow despite that kind of a track.
Well, that's correct, Bill. Usually we always look at the surface low pressure and the track of that surface low to decide who's going to get the heavy snow. But because there's such an expansive area of cold Arctic air to work with this storm system, we're likely just going to be all snow here in the upper Midwest, including the Twin Cities. And let's just zoom in. Well, actually, we're looking at, again, southern Canada and much of the United States right now. This is at 850 millibars. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is that there is a huge reservoir of cold air over Canada and the northern portion of the United States. That's indicative of this purple and red and orange colored areas. that you see on the
Tom,
map.
if I can interject, so the 850 millibar, that means closer to the surface than that previous map that you showed
Right,
us?
yeah, much closer to the surface,
Okay.
and it's just a little bit above the surface, probably at the height of the Sears Tower, at the top of the Sears Tower in Chicago. That's when you start getting at the 850 millibar level. But we look at that because as precipitation falls through the atmosphere, especially the lower layers of the atmosphere, the precipitation could melt if it's warm enough, if it's over 32 degrees, that snow will melt and be rain when it reaches the surface. So we're always looking for temperatures below 32 degrees at 850 millibars and 700 millibars for that matter to get snow. And at 850 millibars right now, and here's Minnesota, hopefully you guys can see it, we are well below freezing. In fact, the light blue lines, which are down here in Nebraska and Iowa, that's where that 32 degree Fahrenheit line is located, and that's well south of us. And now this is for this morning, but let's just take a look at through time. Here's this evening, and I'm going to zoom in and we'll focus in on the upper Midwest here. Remember, keep an eye on that light blue line. That's 32 degree line. That's this morning. And now here's this evening. It actually gets colder over Iowa. The atmosphere gets colder, and that's because as the precipitation starts to develop and falls through the atmosphere, it cools the atmosphere. And now we're at midnight tonight, light blue line, well south of Minnesota. And actually our atmosphere cools during the morning tomorrow as cold air filters in from Canada. So needless to say, this storm system should, in theory, be all snow as that precipitation encroaches on the upper Midwest.
Okay. Tom, another thing that you might read in the weather discussions that I think people might be interested to know more about is the term negatively tilted. What does that mean, and is that something that's going to play a role in this storm?
It is going to play a role in this storm, and negative tilt means that instead of, when you look at a trough and you look at the base of a trough, which is, you can see here, this is at jet stream level. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you guys can see this a little bit better. But when you look at a trough and you look at the base of a trough, which when we get into late tonight, you can see the base of the trough extends through the Dakotas and then down in Nebraska. It's almost in a straight north to south line over the Dakotas and Nebraska. If it's a straight north to south line, then that is not negatively tilted. But if it starts to bend back to the northwest, then that trough does become negative tilted, and that is actually an indication that a storm system is increasing or has increased in intensity. And take a look at what happens from this evening, which is 7 p.m. You can see a little bit of a negative tilt to this trough, but watch as we head through time how this storm system really starts to bend, or at least the trough starts to bend from northwest to southeast over Minnesota. And this is now tomorrow afternoon. That's again indicative of a strengthening or strengthened storm system. And at the same time, we're getting diffluence and divergence in the atmosphere right over Minnesota. So there's no reason why this storm system shouldn't increase in intensity overnight tonight and into tomorrow morning.
Okay. Looking at the bottom line effects, what is your personal forecast of what you expect to actually happen in terms of accumulation and timing?
Well, one thing that I'm going to look at, and I'm not going to focus too much still yet on surface features, although it does appear that low pressure system is going to go north of the Twin Cities. What I'm going to look at, though, is a jet streak in our atmosphere, and I'm going to show you it right here. You're seeing the jet stream. This is at 300 millibars, and we're focusing on the upper Midwest, and hopefully with my cursor you can see where I'm pointing at. This is Minnesota right here. But watch what happens to this light blue area winds in our atmosphere. This is at midnight tonight, and look at what happens at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. That light blue area becomes a little bit of a greenish color. What that is that's a jet streak. And usually right at the base of that jet streak, or at the right rear quadrant of this jet streak, which would now be located over eastern Minnesota and western Wisconsin, that's where you get some fairly intense lift. And that's where you can get heavy snowfall accumulations at 1 inch to 1.5 inches per hour. And I think that is going to happen for at least a few hours over eastern Minnesota and western Wisconsin. So that's one of the reasons why I believe that we're going to get quite a bit of snow here in southern Minnesota.
And now what time is that expected heavy amount of snow that you see, like early hours of the morning?
It is going to be early hours of the morning, probably between, oh, I would say about 2 a.m. and 8 a.m.
Okay. All right. The beauties of live webcasting, right?
Oh my God, isn't this great?
Yeah. It doesn't get any more organic than this, folks.
Yeah. This is what you get, Bill, when you have a 14-year-old and a 7-year-old pestering each other at 10 a.m. in the morning.
Yep, yep.
You don't get this on television, Bill.
No, you
This is
don't.
what you don't get on television.
Yeah.
I think people are going to find that a little amusing. If I
Yeah.
could have only pointed the camera at my kids there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, Bill.
Well, that
Anyway,
gives us a
Bill.
good, I think that gives us a good sense of what's going on, and I again appreciate the conversation. I think people really enjoy, hearing some of the technical aspects without. Well, we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Bill. One more thing I wanted to show you
Sure.
before my kids butted in there. But this is the GFS model for looks like 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. And we talked about that jet streak over Minnesota at about 4 a.m. Watch what the GFS does for snow totals over southeastern Minnesota and eastern Minnesota and western Wisconsin. Look at that enhanced area of blue colors with the QPF over the Twin Cities and Rochester. If everything goes as planned, there could easily be a good 4 to 6 inch band of snow due to that jet streak over eastern Minnesota and western Wisconsin. Now that's the GFS model that we're looking at, so I'm not saying that all models are showing that, but it is. I do believe that it's trending in that direction, that we're going to get a 3, 4, 5, 6 hour period of real heavy snow right during the commute time, which could cause big problems.
And QPF is.
That's quantitative precipitation forecast. One problem that we have is that as weather forecasters is sometimes we focus too much on QPF and we live and die by where a model places the QPF. Of course, as we get real close to the onset of a storm, it does help to look at QPF, but often we can rely too much on exactly where a bullseye of precipitation is focused in these computer models. That's why I like looking at the middle and upper aerodynamics of a storm, and they look real positive for this storm system.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again for your time, Tom, and we'll look forward to catching up with you in the future again.
Yeah, Bill, I'm sure we'll probably have something this afternoon. Maybe we can do another little quick chat for people this afternoon.
Sounds good.
All right, Bill.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Tom.